Hello, thank you so much for being here. I'm Soul Song Sage, and in today's reading, we are going to be taking a look at how to best approach a situation in your life. So the intention here is to just get a clearer picture of your situation, to have a little bit more discernment about different aspects of that situation in order to have a better idea of how to move forward. So to start off, I want to get a card from the BTS Song of the Soul Oracle. And this is going to represent the overall energy of your situation before we get into the specifics with the tarot. So what is the overall energy of the situation? Okay, we have microcosmos will shine in our way tonight. And the key word is individuality. Next, I want to take a look at the oracle cards, and this is also going to represent the overall energy of your situation. We have lilac with first emotions of love. And the quote is, "Love is the magician that pulls man out of his own hat." Next, we have activation with number 3, yerba mate. We have number 5, bloom. And last, we have the harpy eagle. Okay, so I did not intend for this to be a love reading, but I am definitely getting that energy. So if you're not interested in hearing about love, maybe this reading is not for you. Or maybe I should just put it in the title so that there's no confusion. But obviously there are different forms of love, so this doesn't necessarily have to be romantic love, but that is mostly what I'm getting, is more the emphasis on romantic love. But we'll see as we go along, like if it could be applied to other relationships more generally, that are significant enough for you to, have feelings of love for that person, even if it's not romantic love. But for some of you, I am getting the sense that you are either very recently in a new romantic relationship, or you might have just met someone that you are like falling in love with. Or, for some of you that are single, this could also just be that you are looking for love. You are, wanting to attract love into your life, to start a serious romantic relationship. I'm not just getting that from the first emotions of love, but we have activation here, which is, it's a new beginning, but it has more of a sense of taking action. So like starting something new, which we can get into in a moment. But like also with bloom, I'm just getting like, love is blossoming. For those of you who are already in a relationship, there are a couple different ways that I feel like I can interpret this. But for some of you, it could be like, especially if you've been together for a while, there could be this sort of, how should I say, a sort of fear that like the first emotions of love are beginning to fade. But like, that's the thing about lilac, is like, it is so sweet and fragrant, but the blossoms last for like a week, like, and then they're gone. I don't know exactly how long they last, but I feel like it's maybe a week is what you get. And it smells absolutely lovely while they're blooming, and then it's over. But like, that's what this card actually talks about, is like enjoying those emotions, but like not trying to cling to them, right? Because if you are wanting to have a long-term committed relationship, those feelings need to deepen into something more solid, right? So for some of you, maybe you're having like this sort of fear about losing those first emotions, and you're like trying to figure out how to maybe reactivate like a sort of spark or connection with your partner. But regardless of which scenario you fit into best, there is like a message here about needing to make changes, needing to make adjustments. And like with Bloom, this card also talks about like confidence and strength. The harpy eagle also represents strength, but there's like, well, even with like individuality, like there could be, for some of you, there could be a sort of imbalance of getting lost in your relationship, of losing yourself in your relationship, and trying to figure out how to maintain your individuality while also being committed to your partner, right? But there's like, this card talks about needing to make some kind of adjustments, of reassessing your life, and thinking about what it is that you want, and like, so that you can like compare, like whatever you envision for your future, you can like look at your situation now to sort of reassess where there is an imbalance. But for any of you, whether you're single or in a relationship, I do think that it is interesting that we have this card of individuality when the other cards seem to be giving me so much a message about romance and relationships. And I think that is, the message of not looking to somehow attach your sense of self-worth based off of your relationship status or who you're in a relationship with, etc. It's of being strong and allowing yourself, like she is confident. She's like, this card talks about self-confidence and femininity, etc., but also of strength. And it's like she is able to bloom excuse me, she is able to bloom because she is so confident in herself, because she knows who she is, and she will, shine, bloom, however you want to phrase it, but she allows that to be seen. She doesn't lose herself, or, by being influenced by others, of, whether that's your romantic partner or not. But in general, there's this need of maintaining your sense of individuality. Not to say don't enjoy getting swept up, and if you're in the early stages, especially, like, enjoy that time. Just don't lose sight of yourself. Don't assign your sense of identity to your partner. That's the overall energy I'm getting anyway. Like I said, this activation could refer to, like, if you're in a relationship, it could be sort of like a new way of, like these adjustments. It could be like a new chapter, a new form of your relationship. And maybe that is like the first, fluttering feelings of love, leaving, drifting away, whatever, fading. But like the intention, what that allows for is for those feelings of love to deepen into something more stable, something more solid. But yeah, for others of you, that activation, I'm really getting like, this is like the beginnings of love, a new relationship. Or for those of you who are single, it could just be a new way of living, of, how you view yourself, how you live your life, that can allow for a relationship to enter, making room for that in your life, if that makes sense. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and get into the tarot now. So each of these cards, it's going to represent a different aspect of your situation. And we're going to take a look at what needs healed, what needs protected and like nurtured, what needs to be accepted, and what needs to be released. And so hopefully by taking a look at this, we can get sort of like pick apart your love situation so that you can know how to move forward in order to make sure that your relationship is healthy and stable and is set up to last for a long time. That's actually, no, it's this card. That's actually another thing that's interesting about this card is that apparently yerba mate is also used as an aphrodisiac. And the guidebook talks about how there's like a potion that's made with it, that if a couple drinks it, it's supposed to ensure that their relationship will last forever. So that's interesting. I just thought about that when I was like trying to say, like, looking at these things should help to, you know, figure out how to have a like long lasting stable relationship. And then that reminded me of the love potion. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look now at the tarot. I am going to go ahead and shuffle out all of the cards, so that way anyone who doesn't like to watch the shuffling can go ahead and skip ahead. But for those of you who like to watch the shuffling, let's start by taking a look at what needs healed in this situation. Of course. We have the World. Let me grab a little washi tape. I said this in my last reading. I don't know that it actually matters because this channel isn't monetized, but I figure it doesn't hurt to be safe. So next, let's take a look at what needs protected or nurtured in this, I was going to say relationship, but for some of you, it is the relationship. For some of you, it's this situation that you're in, wanting to attract love or whatever. But what needs protected or nurtured in this situation? Ooh. Okay. The one flipped out and then like a whole stack tried to come with it. But we have the Seven of Pentacles in reverse. Next, what needs to be accepted within this situation? The Two of Swords. And finally, what needs to be released? What needs to be let go of? We have the Queen of Cups in reverse. Okay, so first of all, what needs healed? We have the World. And so what I'm getting is like this will obviously look different for, you know, depending on which situation you resonated with when we were talking about the overview. But really, in general, this could have to do with past relationships and healing from the end of those, you know, those relationships being over. You know, the World talks about completion, but having, you know, like completing one chapter allows for, you know, the activation for the beginning of a new one, right? But it seems like there could have been another relationship, or, you know, for some of you, multiple relationships that were difficult for you to process and let go of. And so it really sounds like you need to allow yourself to have time to process your feelings of grief, really. You know, and it might not be, you know, for those of you who are like, oh no, I'm happy that I'm not with my ex anymore, or whatever. It's not necessarily that you miss the person you used to be with, you know, like painful breakups, like even if you are no longer wanting to be with that person, just having gone through that, if if the if you haven't allowed yourself the time to, grieve like in the moment, those feelings, those unprocessed feelings of grief can affect you in an unconscious way, like in the sense of like, since you broke up with your ex, or since, things didn't work out for you in the past, you might be afraid that this relationship is going to end the same way, right? And for those of you who feel like you are afraid of losing those feelings of, like those, the magical first emotions of love, right? If you're afraid of losing that feeling, that could be because maybe in the past you had those same feelings for an ex, and then it turned out that your partner was, not the greatest person, to be in a relationship with, and you experienced a lot of emotional pain through that experience. But I think the important thing to realize, aside from the obvious fact that, no two people are the same. So just because something happened in one of your relationships in the past does not mean it's going to repeat itself. However, when you have things like that have been unhealed, that you did not process your emotions fully, the fear of that happening can actually cause you to, to perpetuate that sort of cycle, right? Like just think about someone who is, say their partner cheated on them in the past, like an ex. And so when they're in a new relationship, they're super worried about their partner cheating on them because they experienced that pain. That pain was very real, But because of this fear, they could become very clingy. They might look through their partner's text messages or emails, and get like a sort of paranoia of like, or just being overbearing, being like, where are you? Where are you? Like constantly checking in and being like really overbearing and like, what's the word I'm looking for? But just like being so distrustful of their partner. But that actually, what does that do? That drives their partner away. Like no one wants to live that way. You need to have a sense of trust for a relationship to be healthy. But if you are so paranoid about your partner cheating on you because you didn't properly heal from being cheated on in the past, you can actually drive, in some cases, you could drive your partner to cheat on you. But generally, it's just like, what is it that you really want? You want your partner, you want to be in a happy relationship with your partner, right? But if you're so worried that like they might cheat on you and destroy that hope of having a healthy relationship, like you could be so paranoid about that you are making your relationship unhealthy. It defeats the whole purpose, right? And it can drive your partner away. Obviously, that's an example. I'm not trying to say that all of you are like, like being nosy and snooping with your partner and stuff like that. I'm just using that because it's like a really easy example to see how, by not healing past issues, you can cause more conflict in your current relationship. So if you had really bad breakups, and or it doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship, but especially if you were like a young child and experienced someone leaving, whether for whatever reason, whether it was like your parents got divorced, or like someone close to you passed away, or maybe a close friend of yours moved away when you were kids and you couldn't keep in touch, like whatever it is in your past, it's like this ending that you experienced could make you more fearful of your current relationship ending. I don't know if like I'm expressing that well, but like having an unnecessary amount of fear of the relationship ending is going to make it harder to just enjoy your relationship, right? We don't know what the future holds, even if you're used to watching tarot readers that will predict the future. It's really just taking a look at the current energy and assessing which direction you're headed in, right? So it doesn't negate your sense of free will, right? You still have choices and decisions, that you make in life that can determine the direction. And that's the whole point of these readings, is so that you can reflect on where you're headed so that you can change course if you want to. But even so, it's not, even with predictive readings, the future is not set in stone, right? So who knows how long your relationship will last? But I can say with great certainty that if you appreciate your relationship in the moment without fearing the end of it, right? The fear of your relationship coming to an end, you will make your relationship healthier and stronger and more stable, right? Obviously, there's always going to be some elements of life that are outside of our control, but like the best thing that you can do is to appreciate your relationship in the present moment without putting so much anxiety on the future. And in order to do that, you need to heal any past wounds that you have of whether this is like a fear of abandonment that you've developed, or, just like I said, just having really bad breakups in the past and being afraid of history repeating itself. That's what I'm getting needs healed. Okay, so moving on to what needs protected. What needs to be nurtured. And it's really interesting that we have the Seven of Pentacles in the reverse, because the Seven of Pentacles upright is literally the card of nurturing. It's of, tending to your garden, to your crops, in order to help it to bloom, to harvest, to grow, right? So the fact that it is in the reverse, I'm sort of getting like the sense, it feels kind of counterintuitive, but I'm getting the sense from this card, I'm feeling that you kind of just, need to let it grow on its own, if that makes sense. It's like, don't try to control it so much. Don't try to, what needs to be nurtured and protected is the ability for each individual to bloom on their own, like in their own way is what I mean. So, instead of being like a super well cultivated, like well pruned bush or shrub or like whatever, like a little bonsai plant or something, like it's when you spend so much time and care, it's like the gardener is the one who shapes the plant, right? But this is sort of like understanding that while relationships and love need to be nurtured, they don't need to be like stifled. They don't need to be over controlled, like, well, even like what we were talking about with that the relationship. Well, I mean, yeah, but the unhealthy overbearing relationship, like that example of like being like, oh, well, I want this relationship to be good, so I'm going to try to control my partner and make sure that my partner's not, like that, no good. Like you need to allow each person to be their own individual selves, right? That's what a relationship is, two individuals coming together. But that doesn't mean like they become the same person or like they control one another, right? It's like a healthy relationship is one that is based off of like equality, of meeting one another in the middle. And like, yeah, there are times where we need to compromise and meet each other halfway, but it's never about making one person conform to the wishes of the other. It's not about one person controlling the other, right? Like that's not a healthy way to allow a relationship to grow. So that's what needs to be protected, I feel like, is to allow each person yourself included, like what we were talking about is like not getting swept up like into the relationship, like so swept up into the relationship that you lose sight of who you are. You lose sight of your own individuality. Like, you don't base your identity off of your partner or your relationship. You are still you, regardless of what relationship or what your relationships you're in, or your relationship status or whatever, right? So I'm really getting that what needs to be protected is each person, their ability to grow and develop in their own way, right? So like I said, compromise is a necessary part of any relationship, romantic or otherwise, but not to the extent that you are like compromising yourself, right? There's a difference between healthy compromise and unhealthy compromise. If you are just like submitting to your partner, or if you expect your partner to submit to all of your wishes, that's not healthy. That's not sustainable in the long run, right? So I mean, and I feel like that leads perfectly into our next card of what needs to be accepted, because we have the Two of Swords, and it's so interesting to me that this card in particular has this red thread, because it's making me think of the red thread of fate, right? Of like being tied to your person. But what I'm getting more from this, like normally you think about like being at a crossroads or being like at a sort of stalemate or being faced with some decision to make. But what I'm actually getting from this card, especially because there are two figures on this version of the card instead of one, I'm getting that what needs to be accepted within this situation are what we were just talking about, individual differences. That needs to be accepted that, like we have a figure in white and a figure in black, like they're opposites, right? But they seem to complement each other really well, right? So it's still like can be a beautiful thing, but maybe if you had like a sort of idea of your partner being like just completely on the same page as you, and like having all the same interests and all the same likes and dislikes and whatnot, like that's rarely the case in any relationship, but that's not a bad thing. What doesn't work is trying to change your partner, right? This card talks about needing to make changes within you or within your life, but like there's a need to change your perspective of like being two unique individuals within a relationship is perfectly healthy and perfectly normal. It's actually, it makes relationships more interesting, to be perfectly honest, because you get like a different perspective like that. It's nice to share different points of view and different interests, to experience things that you wouldn't normally experience because you weren't drawn to that, but like your partner might be, and they might be able to like open up your horizons to to experiencing new things in life. I realize that I have been talking primarily about relationships themselves. But for those of you, let me like backtrack a little. For those of you who are single and are wanting to, open yourself up to feelings, to experiencing love, to attracting new love in your life, like all of the above, whatever it is, you get what I mean. But I would say like with this healing, like that pretty much still applies. Like you need to accept the endings that have occurred in order to open yourself up to new beginnings. But in this sense of what needs to be protected, on the one hand, there is like a sense of like, how should I explain it? One of not trying to control, like these go hand in hand, I guess, but not trying to control so much like how you want your relationship to show up and who exactly, like having like this super ultra specific scenario in your head with a like super specific idea of who you want your partner to be, like to look like, to, you know, what characteristics they have. It's like not wanting to control so tightly. Think more like with the Harpy Eagle card, talking about what you want to envision in your life. Okay. And if you want, you know, say you want a healthy, stable, long-term committed relationship where you can be happy and you can be, you know, safe to be yourself. You know, like whatever the specifics are. I want someone who I can laugh with. I want someone who I can, you know, open up to, you know, that I can feel safe being vulnerable with, or, you know, like think of those sorts of aspects of your relationship instead of trying to like define so specifically like what you want your future partner to say and what you want them to do and where you're going to meet and how they're going to ask you out, or whatever it is. You know, there's a need to like sort of allow your, like, be open to allowing new love to bloom in its own way, and for your partner to be their own individual, you know. But in another sense, I do want to say that this could also refer to you. And I think that it's great to, you know, like for people who are into manifestation and stuff like that, you know, to like visualize yourself as being more confident and being more this or that or whatever, and saying affirmations. Like, I don't think any of that's a bad thing, but there is something here. There's a message I'm getting here about not trying to be too, how should I say, don't like trim all of the aspects of yourself. Like, look, she even looks like a tree. Like, she's blooming in her own way. But like, don't try to like snip aspects of yourself and get rid of them, like parts of yourself that you don't want to accept. Like, don't try to become someone else. Like, maybe you have it in your head that like you're single because you're too this or you're too that or whatever. It's like, in some cases, like things like that are a result of, you know, like things that are problematic for relationships are usually a result of things that need to be healed. But like, as your actual self, your actual personality, you know, like those deep qualities of yourself, those aspects need to be allowed to grow and bloom and, you know, like show themselves, shine, you know, however you want to say. You need to allow those aspects of yourself to have an outlet to express themselves, because that's honestly how you're going to meet someone who loves you for who you truly are, is to be yourself more fully. Don't try to hide, you know, certain aspects of yourself that you don't like. Don't repress those. Don't shove them into, you know, that's the shadow. So repressing like the denied aspects of self, that's your shadow. And you're not going to find a relationship that you can be healthy and actually feel and accept the love of your partner unless you're being yourself, unless you allow your true nature to bloom, to shine, if that makes sense. So don't try to like cut away aspects of yourself because you think that they're not desirable to anyone, if that makes sense. Right? Like, and I'm talking about, I don't know how there's like a distinction here between, you know, like if someone is like, say, too clingy or too overbearing or being snoopy, you know, that is not really who they are. That is a reflection of like unhealed past experiences, unhealed pain, right? So that's, you know, like certain aspects of self need to be healed, but like I don't know how to like create that distinction. But like, maybe if you are curious about learning more or like getting a better idea of what sort of stuff I'm talking about, like you could look into shadow work. Shadow work might not be a bad thing for you to look into, but it's not denying certain aspects of self, whether it's something that needs to be healed within you or whether it's something that you need to nurture and protect and accept. But like meditation, journaling, things like that can help you reconnect with yourself to, be more grounded in who you are. So you have an idea, like you have with like greater clarity on who you are, so that you can like embrace that and be that more fully, allow yourself to bloom, allow yourself to embrace those aspects of self that you have denied. And that is what's going to attract true love. Someone who loves you for who you truly are, because you are being yourself and allowing yourself to be seen. All right, but moving on back to where I was initially when I realized I was only giving half the reading. We have the Queen of Cups showing up as what needs to be released. And I'm getting a very obvious, straightforward message here of needing to release emotions. And when I say release emotions, I don't mean, like if you've watched my readings before, I've probably said it like a dozen times by now, but like letting go of your emotions means allowing yourself to feel them. It isn't distracting yourself and trying to push on through like, oh, I'll let it go. That's repression. But if you allow yourself to feel your emotions, like what needs healed is really what I'm getting here. But, like for the past relationships and whatnot, but like allowing yourself, allow the tears to flow, allow yourself to work through those emotions so that you can properly release them, so that they're not having a negative influence on your relationship or future relationship, right? You don't need to carry that grief with you now anyway, right? Relationship or not, you don't need to carry that pain with you. So it's important to allow yourself to release those emotions. So aside from emotions, just releasing emotions in general, any, pain, grief that you have, that you need to process in order to release, I am also getting, there's actually a couple of different ways, of course, always. There's a few different ways of interpreting the Queen of Cups in reverse, but one aspect, which I'm not necessarily getting a lot, not, let me just say what it is, and then I can explain it. But sometimes the Queen of Cups in reverse can indicate manipulation, like emotional manipulation, or jealousy. So those are like some negative Queen of Cups aspects. But and I'm not getting like so much the sense of like being consciously manipulative, of wanting to manipulate your partner, but there could just be a sort of like especially if there's like unconscious, unhealed pain from the past, like it can come out without you being aware of it. You can, like it's, like it could be like a bit of passive aggressiveness, or when you're upset or things like that, and that's part of where this acceptance comes in, of like you and your partner are two different people, right? You have different things that you want. And obviously, like I said, compromise is important at times for both sides. But there's, like I'm getting like the scenario of you wanting to do one thing and your partner wanting to do something else. And then you get like passive aggressive and pouty or something in order to like manipulate them so that they cave and cater to your wishes, your desires, right? Like, so like if there's any tendency to do that, take a look at it. Like, it's a good, like, you don't beat yourself up over it. Like, this is not meant to criticize you. But what those things can do, like when those sorts of tendencies come up, if you feel yourself getting jealous, or if you feel yourself, getting, a little bit immature in how you respond to things not going your way, like, take a moment to self-reflect and think of where that's coming from, because more likely than not, it isn't that situation. It's something either from your past that is unhealed, or it could just be a tendency of like a consistent problem. But, the point is that you need to release the tendency to feel jealous or to try to manipulate your partner by acting passive aggressive or whatever it is. It's better to just like have a real talk, or to look at whether it's even the issue with your current relationship, or if it's something unhealed from the past, right? So there's different ways that could play out. But another alternate interpretation of the Queen of Cups in reverse could be a sense of, again, in a way, it's losing your sense of identity, but more so in the sense of maybe not so much identity. That card says individuality anyway. I don't know why I said identity, but losing yourself in the relationship in the sense that you give so much to your partner that you neglect your own needs. And if you find that is a tendency that you have, to put your partner first at your own expense, that needs to be let go of. You need to work on giving yourself the love and care that you need so that you can, be more fulfilled. But like, also just, it's like, it's, an old story. I feel like I say it all the time, but like, if you don't take care of your own needs, you can end up, like, eventually at some point you're going to either end up burnout or sick. Like, if you're not getting enough rest or taking care of yourself, your immune system is affected, and then you're no good to anyone, right? Like, so you need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself first in order to be in a better position to support your partner, right? So that's an important thing to remember. For those of you who are single, obviously the first aspect was for, releasing emotions applies to, anyone. But for those of you who are not currently in a relationship, there could also be, a similar aspect of, even if you don't have a partner to be putting yourself first, maybe there are other people in your life that you put before yourself. Or it could literally just be like being too preoccupied with work or whatever it is, that your own needs might not be taken care of. And that's the best way to get into the energy of attracting more love, is to love yourself and to show yourself love, right? So, and I'm not just talking about, like, a lot of people talk about self-care in the sense of like, oh, take a bubble bath and light a candle. Like, that's great, but that's not taking, like, maybe that's what you need. Maybe you just need a peace, like, some peace and quiet, some time to chill. That's cool. But like, really, like, serious self-care, what you truly need a lot of times is, well, I mean, obviously I am talking about making sure you are rested and you are eating properly, right? You're taking care of those needs. That is obvious, like, of course that is included in self-care. But there's also the need of like this kind of self-care, of giving yourself the space to process emotions, to to heal past wounds, to work through that. And it's not super pleasant. It's not, like, it's not like the warm fuzzy feeling you get from like a a warm bath or something, like, a massage. I don't know what people do for, like that, but you know what I mean? Like, there's like that that association of like self-care, of like, oh, treat yourself. And it's like, it's not just about like spoiling yourself, although that's great to do too. Like it's good to, it is good to to indulge occasionally, right? And to allow yourself certain luxuries. You don't want to be so hard on yourself all the time, but sometimes proper self-care involves unpleasant things, such as working through past emotions and grief and things like that. So all of the above, but just it's about at least giving yourself time to pause and reflect on what it is you need. Do you need to have a good cry? Do you need to just, like let out some tears, or, like, do you need to get more sleep? Are your physical needs being met? Are your emotional needs being met? Like that sort of thing. So there's lots of different ways that could be interpreted, but I hope that like overall this is making sense. So I guess just to sort of like summarize, maybe if that is helpful for you guys, it's really like the cards overall are really just giving me a sense of in order to make your relationship more stable, healthier, long lasting, or to prepare yourself for that, right? The way to do that is actually to focus less on your partner, less on the relationship, less trying to control or influence, allowing things to blossom and grow on their own, and to focus more on yourself, on healing, of, making sure that you are in a good place personally, because that's going to, obviously, if you're in a better place, if you're not in a good place, then your relationship's not going to be in a good place. But if you are in a better place, like on a soul level, like on a spiritual level, on however you want to say it, on a personal, deep level, that is the best way to strengthen any relationship. Because you're not going to be bringing your baggage into the relationship. You're not going to be, putting that extra weight and pressure or whatever it is, unnecessary expectations or past fears, like those are all things that can like hamper and weigh down, strain relationships. But instead of doing that, focus on your own healing, embrace your own individuality, and be more confident in who you are. Allow yourself to continue to grow and develop as an individual, and your relationship will benefit from that. So I think that is that. I am going to go ahead and get some of these lyric cards for any last messages of guidance. Any last messages? Oop, fell on the floor. This might be the beginning. Take 2. All right, that works. Even if you are still in a relationship, this might be the beginning of a new way of being, of a new way of approaching your relationship, or really just of all relationships, really. I think that this applies regardless of whether it's romantic or not. I think that this is like good advice in general, to allow individuals to be individuals and to love, like if you truly love your partner, you embrace those aspects of them. But the best relationships will challenge us and cause us to grow, but never to compromise who we are, right? There's a difference there. So, encouraging one another to be the best versions of yourselves. That was a weird way of saying that, but not trying to change who someone is, like that distinction. I don't know if I made that clear or not. I guess actually, let me get one more of these just for any last messages. Even in the distant future, never forget the you of right now, tomorrow. I'm really getting that that's like more of the like, don't lose yourself in the relationship. Like being in a relationship, two people coming together, it's a beautiful thing. Just don't forget who you are. Don't compromise yourself to an unhealthy extent. Yeah, that's what I'm getting from that. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I feel like these readings always end up being way longer than I ever intend them to. So if you actually watched the whole thing, thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind, please leave me a comment and let me know how this resonated, if it made sense to you. Like or subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope to see you in my next one.